My name is Keith Cotterman. I'm a senior systems engineer with Aerohive Networks. I support Tim Adams, our regional sales manager, Kanishka Ramyar, our commercial ISR, and Andrew Brown, our SLED ISR. The topic of our video is HiveManager Migration. In this video, we're going to discuss the cost of migrating from HiveManager Classic to HiveManager Select, how to create a HiveManager Select instance, whether you're on-prem or in the cloud, what needs to be done to prepare HiveManager Classic for a migration to HiveManager Select, what preparation needs to be done in HiveManager Select before we migrate over, and some recommendations and best practices for HiveManager Select before we move all of our devices over to it. So the most important thing is you need to have valid support on all of your devices, whether they're access points, switches, or routers. If you don't have valid support on your devices and you're wanting to migrate to HiveManager Select, rewind the video a little bit, contact Tim, Kanishka, Andrew, or reach out to your reseller for a renewal quote. If you're moving from HiveManager Classic in the cloud to HiveManager Select in the cloud, which is what we're assuming in our video today, that migration is free. If you're moving from HiveManager Classic on-prem to HiveManager Select on-prem, that migration is free. If you're planning to move from HiveManager Classic on-prem to HiveManager Select in the cloud, there could be a conversion cost associated with that. In that case, again, reach out to Andrew, reach out to Kanishka, reach out to Tim or your reseller to request a conversion quote, and then we can discuss the cost of the migration with you. So if you are a HiveManager on-prem customer, you're going to need to download the OVA for HiveManager Select. You can find that OVA by either logging in or creating an account at thehivecommunity.aerohive.com. Regardless of whether you're on-prem or not, everyone should have an account at thehivecommunity.aerohive.com. That's our support portal where you can not only get things like OVA files and HiveOS firmware, you can also open up support tickets from there, gain access to all of our documentation, CLI guides, user guides, config guides, as well as our blog and our user form. So everyone should have an account at thehivecommunity.aerohive.com. If you're a cloud customer, you can register for a free HiveManager account at cloud.aerohive.com. Again, when we talk about HiveManager Select, what we're really discussing here is HiveManager NG, which has been rebranded to just HiveManager. So in this video, when you hear me reference HiveManager Classic, I'll reference it as HiveManager Classic or Classic. If you hear me just say HiveManager, I'm referring to HiveManager NG, and then either being a Select or a HiveManager Connect account. Connect is a free version of HiveManager in our public cloud with no recurring cost. There is some limited functionality with HiveManager Connect, but again, it's at no cost. So for this video, we're assuming that we're migrating a HiveManager Classic in the cloud instance over to a HiveManager Select in the cloud instance. So preparation for HiveManager Classic to migrate over to HiveManager Select, the first thing we need to do is export our entitlement keys. The entitlement keys that you're using in HiveManager Classic are the same entitlement keys that we'll be using for HiveManager Select. They can actually exist in both instances at the same time. As long as we don't exceed the total number of devices licensed, no issues. The next thing we'll do is back up and export the HiveManager Classic database. That database is going to be used to import into HiveManager Select, which is going to pull in our device inventory, being our access point switches and routers, their host name, their IP addresses if they have static IP addresses, as well as any location data associated with them. That database is also going to contain all of our maps data and the locations of the access points on those maps as well. Once we have a HiveManager Select account created, we need to apply the entitlement keys from HiveManager Classic. We need to import the database from HiveManager Classic. We need to create any administrative accounts in HiveManager Select in addition to the main administrator account that's going to be created when you register for a HiveManager Select account at cloud.aerohive.com. In HiveManager Select, we do have role-based access control, which we'll discuss in a later video in detail. Essentially, it allows you to have different levels of access into HiveManager, and those can be based off of location, anywhere from an administrator account to a help desk account to essentially a read-only account or observer account. Once we've got those three things out of the way, we're going to create our network policy. The configuration is the one thing that we cannot import from HiveManager Classic yet. Hopefully we'll have that in the future. So we are going to recreate a new network policy. Inside that, we're going to define any SSIDs that we need. We'll go over device templates as well. So device templates are new for HiveManager Select. It's a global way to apply things like radio profiles or port objects, whether it be a access port, a trunk port, whatever we need to do there. All those are assigned through device templates. The last thing we'll do is configure any additional settings, being your DNS, your NTP, syslog, SNMP, access console, LLDP, WIPs, any of that kind of stuff that you would typically configure underneath additional settings in HiveManager Classic. We need to make sure that we replicate those. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is go to cloud.aerohive.com, where you need to register for a HiveManager Select instance. If you already have login credentials here, you can log in on the left-hand side. Otherwise, you need to create the register button to sign up for a new account. You're going to be asked to fill out a short form. Once you've completed that form, you'll receive an email where you can create a password. Once you've got your username and your password, you'll be able to log into HiveManager. So complete the form, click register. You wait for that email, create your password, and then you're ready to go. So I've already previously done that, so we're just going to log into a HiveManager NG instance. This is one of my lab environments that I use, so I've reset it. It's completely clean, and so we'll go from scratch here. In our migration today, we've got two AP130s that are online in a HiveManager Classic account, and we'll be moving both of those over. Again, the process is going to be the same whether you're moving over switches or BR devices as well. So you can see we have no devices onboarded. If we come to monitor, completely blank. No map data, it's asking us to create that, and no configurations. So now that we've got access to a HiveManager Select account, we're going to move over to a HiveManager Classic account and begin that process. Here you can see we've got two access points, both are online, both have updated configs, AP1, AP0. Here's the serial numbers, they've got a network policy assigned, DHCP for the IP addresses, although if you do have statically assigned IP addresses, those can be imported into HiveManager Select, and then a HiveOS version here. Now, there is a minimum HiveOS version that's required to onboard devices to HiveManager Select. So if you're running older versions of HiveOS inside of Connect, those will be upgraded automatically as you import them or as they onboard themselves to HiveManager Select. That version could change depending on when you're watching this video and what our minimum requirements are for HiveManager Select. You will be notified inside HiveManager Select if they're running a version that just is absolutely not supported at all and they cannot be auto upgraded, you'll be notified of what the minimum version they need to be upgraded to. In that case, you'll just update them in HiveManager Classic here before migrating them over. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the Home tab, and then underneath Administrators and License Management, we're going to export out our entitlement keys. Now, my HiveManager Select account already has an evaluation key in it, but we'll still go through the process and show you what that looks like. We're going to save this CSV file to our desktop. The next thing we need to do is back up and download the database from HiveManager Classic so that we can retain all the information about our access points and all of our map data. So underneath HiveManager Operations, we're going to go to Backup Database. We want to make sure that we do a full backup. We're going to click Backup Now. Once this is completed, we're going to download it to our desktop and then go import that into our HiveManager Select instance. Now, fingers crossed, you know how these live environments go. Things never really work out. Like I said, like I've said in previous videos, these are not heavily edited. We're just going to roll with this, and so if we need to troubleshoot, we'll do that along the way. So our backup is complete. We're going to go ahead and download that, save that to our desktop as well, along with our entitlement keys. Now, over on the HiveManager Select side, we need to get into global settings. So to access global settings, you're going to look for your name in the upper right-hand corner. As you hover over that, you're going to get a window here allowing you to click on global settings. As we discussed, we need to apply our entitlement keys, we need to import our database, and create any additional administrative accounts that we need to create. If you're wanting to create additional administrative accounts, underneath accounts, you're going to click on account management, and then from here you could add an account. Now notice that we have internal accounts here. These internal accounts are going to be for other coworkers or employees inside of your organization. Put in their email address and their name, choose their level of access, and once we've got our database imported, you'll see your location information over here if you want to restrict them to certain locations. We also have the ability to grant access to an external admin. That would be someone like me who already has my own HiveManager account. You can put in my email address and then choose the level of access that you would like me to have into your environment, so that whenever I log in at my HiveManager, my cloud.aerohive.com account, I will see your account listed on the right-hand side, my account's listed on the left-hand side, and then this allows for remote troubleshooting and administration. So to import the database, we're going to look underneath administration and go to VHM management. Now, the first thing we need to do is to create a backup of our existing environment. I realize there's nothing in here, but the process requires that we have a backup available before we can import any data. So we're going to go ahead and click on the backup now. And this is stating that it's going to suspend the VHM while it creates this. The operation was successful, and notice that it's suspended. So we'll give this a few minutes here. What we're looking for is just waiting for the current status to go back to active. You may need to refresh your page. You can see that currently it's suspended. Now we're going to log back in. We'll navigate back up to global settings and then VHM management. If I could type in my information correctly. So global settings, VHM management, it's active, and if we scroll down, notice that we have a backup here available. So now we're going to import the data that we export out of HiveManager Classic. We're going to come to import VHM. This is asking if you want to import from HiveManager NG or HiveManager Classic. In this case, we want to import from HiveManager Classic. Now this does state that some devices are not supported in this process. I'll test this in later labs. Right now I just have a couple AP130s available. I do know that BR200s and SR2024s are switches. You can onboard those into HiveManager and manage those from within HiveManager Select. So it may be just that they're not supported in this import process. Again, check our YouTube video or check the notes at Go to Stage. YouTube channel or Go to Stage channel. I'll add notes in there for this video to let you know if this does function or does not function. So we're going to hit choose here and select the backup data that we have from HiveManager Classic. And now you've got a couple options down here. If something were to go wrong with the import, you can choose to either abort the operation or continue. I would encourage you to abort the operation. What you'll notice after we complete this is that we can download a log file. The log file is going to let you know what was successfully imported, what was not successfully imported. So let's go ahead and abort that if something goes wrong, review the log file, see what we need to fix, and go from there. We want to get a clean start in HiveManager Select. So we're going to hit the Import Now button, and it's going to begin importing that file from HiveManager Classic. All right, everything was successful. Here we can click to download the log. I will save that to the desktop as well. And what this is stating here is that after the import, in order to move the devices over, you're going to log on to the source VHM, being HiveManager Classic, from where the file was exported, and you're going to delete the devices from HiveManager Classic. And during that process, it's going to ask you if you want to keep the existing config or reset the device configuration to their defaults. or Bootstrap. And here it's directing us to reset the device to their default configuration, which is going to point them back to redirector.aerohive.com, which is essentially our licensing server. That's where these APs can find out where their new HiveManager is going to be located. This works great for HiveManager cloud accounts. Now, if you're a HiveManager on-prem customer, you have the ability to use either DHCP options or DNS options or a local layer 2 broadcast for your access points to find your new HiveManager Select instance on-prem. So you may want to take advantage of that, in which case, and I'll show you when we get over to HiveManager Classic, but you'll just want to point their primary and secondary cap web servers to the IP address or the host name of your new HiveManager account. Again, in this video, we're moving from HiveManager Classic in the cloud to HiveManager Select in the cloud. So we're going to reset their configuration, requiring them to go back out to Redirector, where they're going to, Redirector is going to know about the new HiveManager instance accounts and then point them there. Just going to go ahead and hit OK. Now let's take a second and take a look at the log file, just so we can be familiar with that. Here it's beginning the import, and we're importing migration from a HiveManager Classic VHM. Here we're migrating the VHM domain. Here's the mapping data. We imported a couple serial numbers here. We have 2 devices, and our completed account was 2. And then here's the map data that we're pulling over. Yeah, my favorite Topgolf locations, which consequently the Topgolf in the Colony in Texas is my favorite location. I don't know if the city of Amarillo has a Topgolf, but they should. And you can see everything was successful here. Again, if something were to go wrong with the import, we could review this log file and see what we need to resolve. So now the import's complete. The first thing we're going to do is come over to Monitor. And you can see that we've got our 2 access points here, AP01, AP02. The host names were retained. It actually pulled in the IP address information that these APs had in HiveManager Classic. Now, my APs are pulling an IP address from DHCP, so this is just the DHCP information. The last thing reported to HiveManager Classic. If you had statically assigned IP addresses, those would be retained as well. You could come into the host name of the access point and look at those interfaces and see that they're statically assigned. We've also got our MAC address, our serial number, the HiveOS version, and the location data here. So notice that we've got 1 access point on City Hall first floor and another AP on the first floor here. So if we come over to maps, you'll see that we've got our map data pulled in here. If we take a look at the first floor, we've got our map and the AP location on that map, and this is actually where I placed that access point. And if we look here, we've got an AP on the first floor of City Hall. And again, here's our map data and the AP with the exact location of where it was in HiveManager Classic. Now, if we come over to configuration, notice that we still don't have any network policies here. So we're going to need to create a network policy. What we're going to do at this point is actually start the migration process of moving the APs from HiveManager Classic over to NG. And while they're resetting themselves, going out to Redirector and finding the new HiveManager Select instance, we'll come back here and build our network policy. So let's jump back over to HiveManager Classic. And again, what we're going to do here is select both of our access points, come up to Device Inventory, and Remove. Now, when you click on Remove, here's the screen where it's asking you, do you want to keep the existing configuration or reset the device configuration to their default settings? As instructed, we're going to reset them to their default settings. When we hit OK, it's going to send a reset device command, a reset config command, reboot the devices, and delete them out of HiveManager Classic. Now, a HiveManager or a device serial number can only exist in one HiveManager at a time. So currently, we've got serial numbers in both locations, but from a redirector perspective, this is still the primary HiveManager. So if we were just to simply reboot these access points with their existing config, they're just going to connect back to our HiveManager Classic account. So we're going to reset the configuration and delete them from HiveManager Classic, which is going to remove them from redirector.aerohive.com and just leave the entry for the new HiveManager Select account. Now, while these APs are rebooting, we will take a look. I'm consoled into one of them so we can see it actually rebooting, and then we'll go build our configuration. Hopefully, by the time we get our configuration built in HiveManager Select, these APs will have connected, and then we can push an update to them, a complete configuration update to get the new config on them, and we'll be done. You can see they're both removed. And if we take a look at the console window here, you can see this device is restarting. All right, so let's jump over to HiveManager NG, and we need to create a network policy. So network policies are the same as they were in HiveManager Classic. For this particular video, we only have access points, so we're going to uncheck routing and uncheck switching. Now, we have a bit of a guided config here. So in HiveManager Classic, configurations, you kind of had to jump between different windows. It's a little bit spread out. HiveManager Select is much more clean, much more straightforward. So we're going to name our network policy. The first time we create a network policy, we're going to need to hit the Save button. Afterwards, you can simply navigate around anywhere you want within these tabs. So let's go ahead and name this. Click Save. And notice that's creating and saving the network policy. Now, if we come back to network policies, we can just simply click on the name of the network policy to bring us into this. We have our edit icon here, which will get us back into this guided workflow, or we have these quick links. So if you just need to quickly create an SSID, you can select Add Network and either jump into our guest network configuration wizard, or just create a standard SSID or network here, very similar to what you would do in HiveManager Classic. And then we've also got our device templates, and we'll discuss device templates here in a second. So we're going to go ahead and edit this. Now within here, we need to create our wireless networks being our SSIDs. The next step would be to create our device templates. Once we've done those two things, the last step is to configure any additional settings. Again, DNS, NTP, syslog, SNMP, that sort of thing. At that point, hopefully our APs are connected into HiveManager Select, and we can deploy that policy out to them. So we're going to navigate back to wireless networks, and we'll create a standard SSID here. We'll just call this Corp. And for Corp, we'll use a pre-shared key and set a password here. Now, when you're creating an SSID, whether you're in HiveManager Connect or HiveManager Select, there's a few things you have to do. One, you've got to name it. Two, you've got to choose your authentication type. And then the last thing is we need to define a user profile. Now, notice that you've got your configuration guide over here, so it's letting us know and checking off the things that we've done and things that we still need to continue to do. So I would encourage you to not use any default objects in your production environment. The primary reason for that is that you cannot save changes to a default object. So when you really need to, when something's on fire or something's broke, you're not going to be able to make adjustments to that. Let's go ahead and create unique objects now. We can base those off the default settings in the default profiles, but we just simply need to rename them so that we've got something that we can adjust or change in the future. So we're going to hit the plus sign here to create a new user profile. We'll call this employees. We need to define our VLAN. Do notice that we do support VLAN groups or VLAN pooling in HiveManager Select now. These do not have to be continuous VLAN IDs. They can be a range, or they can be, they can be VLAN 1, 5, 7, or they can be just 1 through 10, whatever you want to do there. So we're going to create a new VLAN object. We'll call this the employee VLAN and save that. If you need to apply any other settings, again, this information that you're seeing here should look familiar to you. Although the UI or the interface is a bit different, it's the same information as you're used to configuring in HiveManager Classic, just in a cleaner workflow here. So if you need to define a firewall policy, if you click on the select icon here, that's going to allow you to gain access to any objects that are either predefined or previously created. So you can see we have our guest internet access only policy, our redirect policy from here. Same thing if you need to tunnel any traffic through GRE or layer 3 roaming. We've got QoS for either rate limiting or policy enforcement there, and then any availability schedules. So we're just going to define an employee VLAN in this case and hit save profile. And then if you are needing to adjust your radios or rates or manage MDNS traffic, how that's handled, you can do that underneath additional settings and optional settings here. So notice underneath optional settings, we have radios and rates. We've got some filtering capabilities in here. If you need to schedule your SSIDs to be turned on or off, you can do that from here as well. So we'll take a look at customize. Again, if you've ever adjusted your data rates, this should look familiar to you. very similar to what we have in HiveManager Classic, where you can define what your basic data rate is going to be, disable any of your lower data rates there, and you can do that across both 2.4 and 5. If you've got traffic filters defined on an SSID, maybe you don't want to allow client-to-client communication, you can uncheck that or check that. And then most of you today are converting your IP multicast to unicast, either auto or set to always. We have added a couple of new features into HiveManager Select, really a functionality of Hive OS, but they're configurable inside the UI here. And that's the ability to filter non-essential broadcast traffic or to drop multicast traffic. And that could be pure MDNS traffic, that could be multicast or broadcast DHCP, IPv4, v6, any type of traffic. So for education customers that's been dealing with MDNS traffic from Chromebooks or iOS devices, very beneficial here. And really the MDNS problem that we're all experiencing today spans any vertical. So some added functionality for controlling broadcast and multicast traffic there. So again, once we've named our SSID, defined our authentication type, and defined access to the network through a user profile, we're going to click on Save. If we needed to create any additional SSIDs, we could do that from here. This is the time when I would encourage you to spend some time inside HiveManager Select and get comfortable with some of the additional options that we have here, whether that be our newly released cloud configuration groups, whether that be the assignment rules based on user profile. Assignment rules can be based on location, operating system, PPSK user group, radius attribute, time of day, MAC address, MAC OUI. We also have assignment rules for network devices. So maybe you've got some devices in a certain area of your network that you want to be configured differently than others. Again, we've got different ways to group those together. We'll cover a lot of that in a later video. Again, here we're just focusing on the migration, but please check our YouTube channel or Go to Stage channel for some additional videos. So once we've defined our SSIDs, now we're going to define a device template. And device templates are something new to HiveManager Select. These were not available in HiveManager Connect. What we use these for is to assign, from an AP perspective, to assign radio profiles. If you're managing switches, it could be to assign switch port or spanning tree or PoE configurations to any device that is assigned this network policy that we're creating here. So it's a global way to configure all your devices at one time. You still have the ability to go in and configure devices one-off through the device-specific settings, but this is a way to set those configurations globally inside the network policy. I do encourage you to create device templates for all your devices. The way I do this is based on hardware model. So if I've got an AP130 and an AP250, I would create an AP template or a device template for each one of those models. Even within that, let's say again that I've got two AP130s. One of those are going to be in a high density area. One of those are going to be in a remote building somewhere with just a few users. The radio profiles may be different between those two. And so we can use the assignment rules, again, either based on a cloud configuration group, based on an IP subnet, based on the AP's location on a map. We can use those type of attributes to determine what configuration is going to be put on each one of those devices. Really nice functionality. We had that at a low level in HiveManager Classic with device tags and topology maps, but we've really built upon it in HiveManager Select and made it a lot more user-friendly. So for this particular video, we're going to create one device template for our AP30s that we have onboarding. So when we hit the add button, you'll notice that here, this is going to be all the access points that are currently supported in HiveManager. So if you're ever curious what devices are supported in HiveManager, this is a good way to figure that out. Again, if we were to come back, I'm going to jump around on you for a second. If we come back over to policy details and enable switches, when we come back over to device templates, let me come back over here. Let's save that. Now when we come over to device templates, notice that we have AP templates as well as switch templates. So here are all of the switches. Notice that on the import screen, it said that you could not import the 2024s. I don't know, again, if that's just through the import process. Maybe it's just a typo. I'll test that in a later lab environment on my own time and then post notes to the YouTube channel or the Go to Stage channel and let you know about that. But we do support the 2024s as well as all of our other SR line of switches and then the Dell N-Series switches here as well. So if you're ever curious what type of device is supported, just using your device templates is a good way to figure that out quickly. So we're going to select the AP130. Now for the template name, I typically will just name these after the hardware model. Again, if you're going to have the same hardware model with two different configurations, I would still stick to the hardware model name, but then maybe either throw on the location or throw on the features that you're enabling that's different from the other profile there, something like that. So for this, we're going to name it AP130. And from here, what you're seeing is the interfaces on this particular device. So an AP130 has one Ethernet port and two radios, both being static, Wi-Fi 0 being your 2.4, Wi-Fi 1 being your 5 gig. If this was an AP250, you would see two Ethernet ports, and you'd still see Wi-Fi 0 and Wi-Fi 1. But remember that an AP250 has a software definable radio, so that Wi-Fi 0 could be 2.4 or 5. As we scroll down a little bit, here's your port types and use for your Ethernet port. You can see this is just simply going to be an uplink port. We could make this a bridge port or a 802.1q trunk port. If you've got multiple Ethernet ports, you can aggregate those together, or those can be redundant links. And then here you can see our radio settings. So if you are running something like an AP250, you should always know what's being applied to the radio, because it's going to specify being 2.4 or 5 here on that Wi-Fi 0. So again, in this case, we've got default templates here for our radio profiles. Even if we're going to use the default settings that are in the default templates, we still need to rename those so that we can make adjustments in the future. We will cover the radio profiles in detail in a later video. A lot of nerd knobs in there. Very useful tools or functionality inside the radio profiles, but we need to understand what they all do and how they can affect one another and affect performance and even connectivity in the network. So we'll cover that in a later video. For this video, we're just simply going to create a couple and get those named so that we can make changes to them later on. So here we're going to create a 2.4 gigahertz. What's important here is to make sure that you set your radio mode. So this is a 2.4 gigahertz radio, and so we can see that the bands that we have here are going to be BG, old legacy technology. We want to make sure that we're using at least N, so we're going to move our slider over for at least N. We have consolidated our maximum transmit power, our transmit power floor, and the max drop here. Again, I'm not going to go through all these settings. We're just going to name them, but a lot of good functionality here. So we're going to go ahead and save that radio profile. Now notice we still have Wi-Fi 0 selected, and we've assigned that how-to 2.4 gigahertz to Wi-Fi 0. We're going to unselect Wi-Fi 0, select Wi-Fi 1, and create a 5 gigahertz radio profile. Now, when we created the Wi-Fi 0, the reason why we only had the 2.4 gigahertz technology supported modes available is because that's a static 2.4 radio. If this had been an AP250, you would have the ability to set all the way from BG to AC. So make sure that you're getting your radio modes correct for that. Let's go ahead and create a new. We'll name it 5 gigahertz. Here you can see it's defaulting to N. The AP130s are AC capable, so we could drag that over to support AC if we wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we're going to save one more time to save that device template. So now we've got one AP130 device template here. And if we needed to edit that, we could jump back into that just by simply clicking on the link. If we wanted to take advantage of the assignment rules, which we will cover in detail in a later video, you would create another AP130 device template. You would name it again something functionally for whatever you're going to use that for. And then once you have two device templates for the same hardware model, you'll have the ability to assign assignment rules. And again, that can be based on subnet, the AP's location on a map, or our newly introduced into HiveManager Select cloud config groups. Now we're going to move on to additional settings here. And again, since we're just migrating from HiveManager Classic to HiveManager NG, you've got all these settings available to you here. So if we jump back over to our HiveManager Classic account, come over to Configure. Here you can see that we've got a network policy. If we edit this and then scroll down, well, if we just click on the SSID here, notice that this looked very similar to what we were seeing in the HiveManager Select. You name the SSID, you choose your authentication type, and then what's different is here you would have to save and navigate to another window to define your user profile. In HiveManager Select, we've unified that and made that a little bit more streamlined. But if we were to click on additional settings here, just like the additional settings tab inside of HiveManager Select, notice that we have all the same stuff here, right? All the same settings all exist over here as well. So define any DNS settings, any NTP servers, any of this additional setting stuff in here, match this up from what you have in HiveManager Classic. Keep in mind DNS is very important. So if you have your own DNS servers, define those, or if you plan or if you choose to, use the open DNS settings that we use by default. So we're going to go ahead and choose to save there. Nope, we don't actually want to save. We just want to hit next to carry on there. Okay, so so if any of you have ever worked with me, you know I'm a little bit OCD. And when we were initially going through this, whenever we got to the point where we're importing our database from HiveManager Classic into HiveManager Select, there was a little box there that said that BR200s and SR2024s, along with some other devices, weren't supported for the import. And I said, well, I'll try that in a later lab. I recorded this video, got through it all, and then was feeling a little bit lazy with myself and just wanted to correct that. So what I'm doing is I am going to edit this video. We're going to stop at the point here where we've completed our configuration. I went back and added a BR200 to my HiveManager Classic account, exported out that database, the exact same HiveManager Classic account as we imported before, except for this time it has a BR200 added to it. So we're going to pick up, and what I've done, this is, I actually reset this entire HiveManager Select account, and the only thing I've done here is created our network policy. So if you notice, we have the how-to network policy there with our corp SSID and our user profile and our device template for the AP30s. So we're going to pick up from there. We're going to go back through to global settings and try to import that data from HiveManager Classic that now has a BR200 in it and just see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen, so maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Fingers crossed. All right, so we're going to go up to global settings here. VHM management. I did not create the backup, so we need to create a backup quickly. And again, it's going to suspend this so we can create the instance there. Sorry, not the instance, but the backup. If you watched our intro to how-to video, short little video I did just introducing the team and kind of explaining what we're going to be doing here, I did say that these are going to be personalized videos. So here's the personalization for you. Hope you enjoy. And for anyone that's not an Aerohive customer in TOLA, and you're wondering what the heck is going on, why is this guy OCD, and why is he doing this? Nah, that's just kind of how we work here. I should say it's not how we work, it's how I work. All right, let's see if we can get a backup created. Okay, so we've got our backup now. Hey, sorry about the Frenchie. So we're going to pick up by importing the VHM data from HiveManager Classic. And you can see here the last time we did the import with just the two AP130s. So we're going to import a Classic account, and here's where we're saying that these devices are not supported. So we're going to find out if it will actually pull in the BR200. We're going to choose our file from the desktop, and I just overwrote the same file so it has the exact same file name and all of that. We're going to abort if there is an issue there and import. Fingers crossed. All right, so the import was successful. Let's go ahead and download the log and make sure that it actually pulled in 3 devices there. So we're going to save our import. That should be number 2. Let's go ahead and just open this up. Yeah, so import count is 3. Awesome. I will say that last night, so this is, today is September 3rd. So on September 2nd, we did have an update to HiveManager, and we added, what we added was the cloud config groups, which we'll discuss in a later video. A really awesome feature. They changed some color scheme and some of that stuff too, so maybe that was part of what they rolled into it. That's part of our continuous delivery model, is all I can say. Our engineering team, our product management team, they move extremely fast, and one, they just offer a lot of features and functionality, and two, they can fix things that previously weren't fixed. And so hopefully this is the result of some of that. So very cool. We were able to actually import two AP130s and a BR200, and let's just confirm that. So if we come here to OK, it was succeeded. You can see that it's been a couple hours later. Went and had some dinner and started feeling bad about myself for being lazy. So let's go to monitor, and we should see 3 devices in here now. Yeah, and so we've got AP1, AP2, and a BR200, all assigned to locations. And if we go check our maps data, I put the BR200 in the basement. I don't think I assigned it to any position necessarily. Oh, and no map. So this is the thing. If there's no map in there, the AP is associated to this map, but because there's no map to place it on, it's not showing up here. So again, if you've got your APs, if you get your devices assigned to locations underneath monitor, but you don't have maps pulled in, that association is there, but they're not going to be displayed. Whereas if we take a look at the first floor, we can see that we've got AP2, and I move these around, so AP2 is near the vault. And I believe this one here on this floor is near like the jury break room or something. Yep, jury break room. So very, very cool stuff. Let's go to configure, and you can see that the network policy that I actually created before importing the data from HiveManager Classic is still in place. Everything is good. So now what we need to do is back up. Well, not necessarily back up for you, but for me, we need to migrate the actual devices from HiveManager Classic to HiveManager NG now. Now, when we imported there, and it gave us a screen telling us that we need to delete the APs out of HiveManager Classic and reset their config to factory default or bootstrap. There's a second box or a second step there, and that second step says that we need to change these access points from an unmanaged state to a managed, and that's important. If you don't do that, whenever these devices point to redirector.aerohive.com, they're going to be stuck on an island because they're in an unmanaged state. So if we come here to our column picker icon, there's a lot of different columns you can see, but we should have a managed state in here. So if we enable managed, and then we scroll over, we notice that all 3 of these devices are unmanaged. If they stay this way and we delete the devices out of Classic, they're never going to populate into NG because they're in an unmanaged state. So we need to do that after we delete the APs out of HiveManager Classic and while they're rebooting before they make a connection here. So let's go do that now. So we're going to jump back over here, come to configure, all devices. We've got our 3 devices here. I'm going to select all 3 of them, go to device inventory, and we're going to remove. And here we've got the screen saying, do you want to keep the existing config or reset the device configuration to their default or bootstrap settings, which is what we were directed to do. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. This is going to delete the APs out of here. And the APs are actually going to start rebooting right now. They all just went orange. And so now we're going to jump back over to NG. We're going to select all 3 of these devices and then come up to actions, change management state, and mark these as managed. And so yes, we're going to move them from unmanaged to managed. All 3 were successfully done. Now if we open up our serial window, we can see that actually I'm in one of the AP30s, 130s here, so we can see that that's rebooting. And we'll just watch this go through the reboot process. Now, since we factory defaulted these, once we get to a command prompt here, the login credentials are going to be admin for a username and Aerohive all lowercase for the password. And we'll run a couple commands just to kind of show you the show capwep command, which is very important. Anytime you're either onboarding a new device or moving a device like this, the show capwep client command is going to give us an idea of what's going on with the access point. So 2 things are important here. You need DNS set, and so I'll show you the show DNS command. And then you need to know where we're at in the capwep process statement. Okay, so we should have a command prompt in just a second. All right, so DNS is very important, so we can run a show DNS, and we can see that we've got a 172.16.99.4, and that is actually my domain controller in my lab environment, which does have a DNS running on it. You can run a ping to Google so we know that we can get outbound. Now, if you don't have DNS, it's the wrong DNS, you need to change that. You can just run a DNS server IP and then put in the IP address of your DNS server. The other command is going to be show capweb client. And show capweb client. So show capweb client, here we can see that the capweb client is enabled, and the transport mode is UDP, which is what it uses by default. So that's going to be UDP port 12,222. If that's not available, the access point can use TCP or HTTP over TCP, so 443 over 80. So if your access points are showing a transport mode of HTTP over TCP, probably your firewall is just blocking that UDP port. Either one is fine as long as the APs can resolve and get outbound. Notice that we've got the IP address of the access point here, 99.122, and no server IP address or primary HiveManager name. So the access points or any of the Aerohive devices are going to get that from redirector.aerohive.com. So we're just going to keep running that command, and we'll watch this AP go through that process. So right now it's in a pause state. Here you can see it's sending a discovery packet to find the capweb server. And this IP address, that 54.172, is one of the IP addresses for redirector.aerohive.com. So we know that DNS is working, we know that network connectivity is working, and now you can see that the access point has connected securely to the capweb server, which is the redirector, and redirector has pointed the device at the primary HiveManager name, which is HMNG-prod-va2 cm-01.aerohive.com, which is correct because if you notice, our cloud instance exists in cloud-va2. And if you're ever not sure what your primary HiveManager name is needs to be, you can come over here to Global Settings and About HiveManager, and you'll see that listed right here, right? So the exact same thing as we see here. And so now what Redirector has done is pointed the access point to our HiveManager account. And you can see here that it's now changed the IP address to a 34.202, which is in the correct range for our cloud. And now the access point is making an attempt to connect to HiveManager. And you can see that it's connected securely to the capweb server at that address. And it's actually moved from that master capweb server to a secondary. And so we can go look at that. Notice that this was the master, and now we have this capweb server host. And there's actually several here. If you hover over this, there's quite a few. So it just needs to be one of those. And it's sending a discovery packet here. It's handshaking with the capweb server. So this is that secure connection between the access point and the capweb server. And now it's showing connected. And we should get a green light behind us there, just briefly. The green status light showing that the AP is now connected to our HiveManager, which we do. So this access point has made a connection to our HiveManager. Notice it's still got that 99.22 address there. And the other devices should be connecting here shortly as well. Perfect. So while those other devices come online, what we need to do at this point is a couple things. One, if we need to upgrade firmware to the latest version or whatever version we want to run, we can do that now. We also need to get a configuration onto the access point. Again, remember we reset the device to a default config, so we need to push our new configuration out to it. There's a couple ways you can go about that. You can select the access points here that are online. We don't have any BRs. Notice that we do have the BR200 WP connected. We didn't create any configuration for the BR in our how-to network policy, so we're going to unselect that for now. So one way we can do this is to either an individual access point or multi-select and come up to the edit icon. And now if we come over underneath device configuration, notice that we can assign a network policy here. We just have the one available. The method that I prefer and what I think will be best for you if you're migrating a lot of access points over or a lot of devices over is to come up to configure, enter into your network policy that you have, and then just jump over to deploy policy. When you go this route, any device that you select from here is going to also be assigned that network policy. Depending on how long you've been working with HiveManager or how familiar you are with HiveManager Select, it may be a bit overwhelming to jump into the device-specific settings, and also I believe that it's a few more steps there. Here, we just want to make sure that this initial config is put on all of our devices that have configurations for those devices, and then we'll update those. So in this case, again, we don't have any config for the BR200s, so we're just going to select both of our access points. And notice you've got a lot of filtering capabilities down here on the left. So you could filter off of location, network policy, connection state, device function, whether it's an access point, or router, or switch. You can even filter off of firmware version, whatever you need to. A lot of filtering capabilities inside of HiveManager Select. So this again is very familiar to what you've all been doing in HiveManager Classic. You're going to select your devices, click upload, and this initial push, and mostly because of the version of firmware that we're running on the devices, being that 6.5 version, we need to push a complete upload to these devices. And I still think that that's best practice. Now, I will say that in newer versions of HiveOS, so I believe once you get to version 8.3 or 8.4, you can actually take a brand new device that has no configuration on it and push a Delta to it to put the initial configuration on it, which to me is very powerful. I think that's really, really cool that we can do that. What that means is zero downtime. You can actually take a brand new device, make a change to it without having to reboot the device. Again, Delta configuration update means no reboot of the device. It takes the configuration changes that are in HiveManager, compares those to what's on the device, and only pushes the difference. In this case, it's going to be the entire configuration. And again, I believe that is 8.3 HiveOS or newer. So since we're running an older version, we are going to push a complete upload. We also want to, you may also want to go ahead and update the firmware from here as well. So if you want to do that, you can check the box to upgrade HiveOS, and then you can upgrade to our golden version, which if you hover over that, I will give you a list of what the golden version is for different device types. So let's see. So for the AP130s, that's going to be the 8.2 R4 in this case. And again, depending on when you're watching this video, our golden version may change. You could put the latest version on there, which is going to be slightly newer, could potentially have some bugs or some issues in it, or you could specify a version. In this particular case, we're going to stick with the version that is on the devices, and we're just going to push a complete upload. So at this point, you can see that's queuing up, and it's going to start pushing that down from HiveManager onto the devices. So that is everything, right? So we essentially had to reboot the devices twice in this case. We rebooted the devices once to move them from Classic to HiveManager Select, and then we're going to reboot them one more time to get the configuration onto the device so that we can start our testing phase. Now, I do recommend that all my customers that's planning on migrating from HiveManager Classic to HiveManager Select to go through this entire process, but move one or two devices over and test your configuration. You know, if you've got BRs or you've got switches and access points, move one of each over, put your config on it, and then test your configuration. Most of you are just going to simply be replicating your config from HiveManager Classic to HiveManager Select, but let's be honest, layer 8 is involved and we all make mistakes. So before we move all of our devices over and put all of our production network onto this new config, you know, potentially have issues, let's make sure that we test everything. Also, if you're using things like captive web portals, the way the captive web portal looks in HiveManager Select is slightly different than how it looks in HiveManager Classic. So test those sorts of things. Make sure that you're happy with how things look, how the workflow is going to be for the end user for the different SSIDs that you're using. Make sure that your VLANs are correct. Make sure that your user profiles are correct. We have a lot of really cool functionality in HiveManager around assignment rules, being able to say if a user comes into a particular building with a particular operating system during a certain time of the day, then they get this user profile compared to some other scenario where we're going to give them another user profile. I would encourage you to create a lab or a test network policy while you're doing this initial testing, and just play around with that. Get comfortable with HiveManager Select and some of the different features and functionalities that weren't available to you in HiveManager Classic. You may find that there are some improved workflows for your end users as far as how they connect and how they use your network that you may want to implement. Again, go ahead and do that, but test. Make sure that your configuration is exactly how you want it, and everything is working in your production network. As always, if you have any issues, if you want help with this, if there's anything I can do for you, or Tim or Kanishka or Andrew, our contact information is at the beginning of this video, and it will be at the beginning of every video. You're always welcome to reach out to us. We're here to help you, whether you're one of our partners or our customers. That's what we're here to do, is make sure that we support you in the field. If you have any questions, comments, also, if there's any other how-to videos that you'd like to see, email me at kcotterman@aerohive.com, KCOTTERMAN@aerohive.com, and in the subject line, just put how-to request or Aerohive how-to request. Tell me what you'd like to see a how-to video made on, and we'll add that to the queue. We are going to have these videos posted on GoToStage, which is a platform developed by GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar, which we're using to record these. And we'll also have a YouTube channel. We need to get at least 100 subscribers so we can get a custom YouTube channel URL and shorten that down from the long URL that it is today. But if you just go to YouTube and search for Aerohive North TOLA, you will find our channel and all of our videos there made available to you. Thank you for watching, and check back soon.